Hello, music class. Welcome back to the music room. As today we are going to have some fun talking about Cats the musical. But before we can talk about Cats as a musical, we have to talk about the poems that they were based on. They were written by a very, very famous author named T.S. Eliot, and the stories were called Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats. And all of these poems were put together in a collection. Let's talk a little bit more about that. These book of poems were written by T.S. Eliot for his godchildren. Now, maybe you have a godparent in your life that does special things for you. Well, T.S. Eliot, he was an author, so he decided to write this book of poems for those kids in his life. It was then adapted in 1981 to a Broadway musical by Andrew Lloyd Webber, and it ran for 18 years. Now, just to give you a little context, if you don't know who Andrew Lloyd Webber is, he wrote The Phantom of the Opera, he wrote Jesus Christ Superstar, he wrote Evita. These are all very famous musicals that have been on Broadway, and maybe you've heard of them before. Now, Cats happens to be one of the longest running musicals on Broadway. When it started in the 80s, it ran for 18 years. So that's a pretty long run for a Broadway show. And then last year, it got turned into a major motion picture with some very, very famous stars. Jennifer Hudson, Dame Judi Dench, and even Taylor Swift, who is we're going to be hearing today sing the song about Macavity, the mystery cat. The poems were written by T.S. Eliot about the secret lives of cats. Now, if any of you have a cat at home, you know they're hard sometimes to figure out. One time they're happy, and then the next moment they're mad at you. And cats seem to have very interesting personalities. So the poems were about how these cats name themselves, maybe differently than we might call our cat Yo-Yo, but then they call themselves Macavity, and they have their own secret names. And they have different personalities, and their personalities are brought out in the poems. But the musical added something too. The musical is about how one cat gets chosen by all the cats and old Deuteronomy, who happens to be the wisest of cats, and that cat gets to go to cat heaven. And that's what they all want. They all want to be chosen. Now, we know cats have 9 lives. Have you heard that before? And this is in this story, the cats want to end those 9 lives and go somewhere that's wonderful all the time. So kind of like going to cat heaven. We're diving in today to the musical poem, or the poem, Macavity, the Mystery Cat. Now, this book right here, some of you have seen Miss E read some of these books of poems with the cool illustrations. It gives you an idea. If you look at him, he is wearing his blindfold, right? So he wants to be super sneaky. And Macavity, he's kind of the bad guy in the story of cats. So we're going to sit back, relax, and listen to T.S. Eliot's story and poem called Macavity, the Mystery Cat. Macavity's a mystery cat. He's called the Hidden Paw, for he's a master criminal who can defy the law. He's the bafflement of Scotland Yard, the flying squad's despair, for when they reach the scene of crime, Macavity's not there. Macavity, Macavity, there's no one like Macavity. He's broken every human law. He breaks the law of gravity. His powers of levitation would make a fakir stare, and when you reach the scene of crime, Macavity's not there. You may seek him in the basement. You may look up in the air. But I tell you once and once again, Macavity's not there. Macavity's a ginger cat. He's very tall and thin. You would know him if you saw him, for his eyes are sunken in. His brow is deeply lined with thought. His head is highly domed. His coat is dusty from neglect. His whiskers are uncombed. He sways his head from side to side with movements like a snake. And when you think he's half asleep, he's always wide awake. Macavity, Macavity, there's no one like Macavity. For he's a fiend in feline shape, a monster of depravity. You may meet him in a by-street. You may see him in the square. But when the crime's discovered, then Macavity's not there. He's outwardly respectable. They say he cheats at cards. And his footprints are not found in any file of Scotland Yards. And when the larder's looted, or the jewel case is rifled, or when the milk is missing, or another peak's been stifled, or the greenhouse grass is broken, and the chalice past repair. Aye, there's the wonder of the thing. Macavity's not there. And when the Foreign Office find a treaty's gone astray, or the Admiralty lose some plans and drawings by the way, there may be a scrap of paper in the hall, or on the stair, but it's useless to investigate. Macavity's not there. And when the loss has been discovered by the Secret Service, say, it must have been Macavity, but he's a mile away. You'll be sure to find him resting, or a licking of his thumbs, or engaged in doing complicated, long division sums. Macavity, Macavity, there's no one like Macavity. There never was a cat of such deceitfulness and suavity. He always has an alibi, and one or two to spare. At whatever time the deed took place, Macavity wasn't there. And they say all the cats whose wicked deeds are widely known. I might mention Mungo Jerry, I might mention Griddlebone, are nothing more than agents for the cat who all the time just controls their operations, the Napoleon of crime. So that's our poem called Macavity the Mystery Cat. I'd like you to follow this video with 2 performances I'm going to give you for Macavity. The first one is from the Broadway musical. The second is from the new motion picture, and Taylor Swift will be singing the Macavity poem. After that, I would like you to fill out the form I've left you. This form is going to give you some input to tell me the differences and the similarities between the 2 versions of Macavity. And then I'd like to know which one you preferred and which one was the one that you thought was the most interesting and fun to watch. And of course, to tell me why. I hope you have a great day. I hope that you enjoy finding out more about Macavity and cats. And I hope you'll join me back here in the music room real soon.